Hey there, I'm Kevin.
And I'm Jamie, and we're your co-hosts for Two Clicks in a Pod.
Join us as we explore our missed times, stories, and memories due to divorce and a 1,000-mile separation.
I can't wait. You ready to get into it, Kev?
I am. Hey, Jamie, you think they're going to swear?
Oh yeah. Consider yourselves warned. Oh my God, I'm so happy right now.
All right, welcome to the show. What's
Dad,
that?
I'll give you props on your
That's one of
sound
Def
effects.
Leppard songs. Welcome to the show. Yeah, but
Nice.
anyway, welcome, Mr. Garderet. How are you?
It's amazing to be here. And I've been following you guys. So it's like a trek back in time. And I go back to the beginning and then I come to your latest one. And then I go back to the beginning. So I'm kind of.
Oh, you're a hopper.
Yeah, he's a hopper.
I'm squeezing into the middle.
I didn't even know what a hopper was until you told me that when we had dinner, weeks or months ago, 6 weeks ago, probably. But anyway, yeah, I thought that was a cool approach, front and back, closing in on the middle.
Though
I like
I just
that.
listened to your PhD friend today, Allison, and that's a little intimidating to go from that into this.
You got to follow that one up.
I'm more PDQ than PhD, but put some letters on the end of my name.
Knowing you'll be enrolling back in college for another degree here tomorrow.
I love that.
28 more years, and
Yeah,
I'll cross with that walker. And how you doing?
Amazing.
all right, that's crazy. Well, let me give a little introduction as to who we're talking to. We've got a guest today, David Garderet, who came into our lives in 1990, and at a very, very young age. But he has had a career in the helicopter world as a pilot and an instructor. Actually was my helicopter instructor back in the day. So we thought it would be a lot of fun to get him on and visit on that, as well as his career in aviation, which has gone through a number of hops and stops. And I know he's got approximately 8,000 hours of flight time and a number of aircraft, primarily the rotor ring. But anyway, just a lifelong friend, stay in touch quite a bit. And he's still in the Dallas area where we learned to fly together, but now a family man, and met him at 18 years young. Hard to believe. But yeah, we're happy to have him on the show and kind of just talk about some memories and bring forward some. It's good to put him in the hot seat now, I think, just about fatherhood and things of more responsibility than the younger days when we first met and just drinking beer, having good times, and telling jokes. So and trying to keep a helicopter in the air. But anyway, David, welcome.
Thank you. Well, let me start with a joke then, since we came in with some good rock and roll.
Yeah.
This one's for Jamie. What do you call a cougar that's losing her hearing?
What comes after cougar? I know pumas before cougar. I don't know. What is it?
A cougar that's losing her hearing is a Def Leppard.
Oh! That's great. That's really good. Had you heard that, or did you make that up?
No, I've heard that. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. You should have taken credit for it.
Oh, we'll get blasted on social media.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I do want to make sure it's clear. You, Dad, said meeting at 18 years young. I want to preface that you were 18 years old. Dad was not.
Yeah, I started teaching Kevin when I was in kindergarten, and he was 18.
Yeah.
Boy genius.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Pretty amazing.
Hey, we're gonna have to coin that on a T-shirt, though.
What?
Cougar moving on to Def Leppard.
That's great. That's really good. I may make a shirt for when we go to, we're going to see them, like Dad said, David, in Atlantic City, which I've never been to Atlantic City. And that's only like an hour and a half from where we are here outside of Philly. So it'll be my first experience to the joys of that. I don't know. But my son I don't know if you heard this on listening to episodes, but he is into rock music. He likes classic rock music. So he's been saying for like 2 years now, I want to go see Def Leppard. And then I got the, like, you know, the email of what's coming up. And it was like, hey, they're coming to Atlantic City. So we've got our whole family, and then both dad and Suzanne, and then my mom and her fiance, Dominic. So we're like the kids with the grandparents going to Def Leppard, which is great. Like, what a life transitional moment, right?
Well, it's full circle, because
Full
I can
circle.
picture it like yesterday with you and Shane and Kevin and us. We were all just air guitaring up and down the aisle at whatever it was called back then, but Dos Equis with Def
Yeah.
Leppard and Poison. And so you were probably 10 or 12.
Yeah, probably 12.
Yeah.
12. Well, maybe not. You were eight, I don't know. 10, 12, who knows? But I still remember that too. And just, we killed it.
Yeah, we did. And they didn't kick us out, but they weren't quite sure what we were doing.
You can't do that now. They don't let you dance in the aisles anymore. Like, you can't do any of that stuff. It's really kind of a bummer, but because I said that to Dad when we went and saw Foreigner this past summer, and you stood up and people were yelling at you, and you're walking in front, and I looked at Dad and go, well, we sure as shit aren't air guitaring tonight. Like, that's not happening.
No,
But
I've started not getting seats anymore at rock concerts. I just go in general admission.
Yeah.
And if I dare, I ease on up to the edge of the mosh pit.
There you go.
Not into the mosh pit, but just up to the side.
Just a bit outside. Just a bit. Yeah.
I'm feeling the
Well, you
energy.
think about it, in today's age and the way people are and the way they act today, when you're paying $600 a ticket to be in the first 10 rows of a venue these days, I mean, nobody wants to have to
not
look
see
through people. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I feel like you have to stand up to really get that music and, to feel it.
Yeah.
You got to move your ass a little bit. You got to move. Yeah.
Well, it's really cool that it seems to have passed down through the genes.
Yeah, that's right. I love it.
I got to see just the drummer on a rock and roll cruise, because he was displaying his artwork on a rock and roll cruise, Rick Allen, and so I got a picture with him, and then he joined in with Cinderella and some others, just with his little drum set.
And he is the one-armed drummer, right?
Yeah.
It's that same guy.
It's the same guy.
I love that. I love it when he would catch that with the one hand. So great.
Yeah. David's told me that's a lot of fun, because you get right up there with them. So, you
I've heard those.
You're standing in a buffet line with the guys. That's what David told me. So,
yeah, amazing. It kind of takes the glamour out of it a little bit when they're in their fuzzy slippers with getting breakfast from mom.
When they're like loading the bacon onto the plate. You're like, oh, you like bacon? Yeah.
But a great way to see a bunch of bands from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. just rocking out. Everybody's dressed in black. Everybody's on that cruise ship for the same reason, which is to rock and roll, because it's not, cruise ships are normally for the newlywed, the overfed, and the nearly dead. And here it's just for the rock and rollers.
That's amazing.
Well, yeah, there's probably the overfed and almost dead categorize that group as well. So
now that's a shirt. That's a shirt.
Yeah.
Well, let's go. I want to go back a little bit. Dad mentioned, obviously, that you guys met when you were early into the United States, teaching as a pilot. But yeah, can we go back to those days? So rewind the clock a bit. Dad, you want to maybe start by telling, like, what made you want to learn to fly? I've never asked you that question. Like, what was the driving force behind wanting to learn to fly? And on top of that, fly a helicopter. Most people jump to a fixed wing aircraft, but.
Great question. I'm not sure that I even knew when I walked in to the heliport, what really, I was always intrigued by helicopters. I can fast forward that when I went to my 20th year high school reunion, Raymond Fosdick was there, and I knew he was a helicopter pilot as profession. And, he pointed out to me, we had a conversation. I told him I'd gotten my helicopter license. This is 20 years after. So that would have been 1993. So I'd probably just finished up my CFI certification. And he said, that's a good thing, because all you talked about was wanting to fly a helicopter. And I have no memory of being that way in high school, but he just, that was his takeaway. So anyway, I was really intrigued. Obviously, to that point, what made me jump out at it was, Teresa's husband, Joel Brown, was actually been in the Army. And when they were dating, he was a Cobra pilot. And then after getting out of the Army, he moved to Fort Worth and went to work for Bell Helicopter. And so Joel was doing this and doing that. And he was, he would do joy rides, and he'd ask me if I'd come, run ground crew for him when he was doing joy rides at the Grand Prairie Airport there at the big trade day shows. So, I was loading them in, and he'd take them and go them around. So it was just kind of that. And then finally he called me up one day and said, I've got use of a helicopter. I'm coming over to Forney on Sunday if you'll be there, and I'm going to bring the helicopter and take you for a joyride. And I said, well, that's really amazing. And sure enough, he shows up Sunday afternoon. I jump in, he takes me up, we go around. We're in a little Robbie 22. I said, this is a small aircraft, number one. It's like, I think my 68 Volkswagen Bug was bigger than that thing. But we go in and we go around, and he let me fly it and do this and do that. And I said, man, this is just amazing. And the best part about it, what sold me on it, was he picked me up in the backyard and put me back in the backyard. And I looked at him and I said, I've got to do this. And he said, well, you're all taken care of. I've already talked to Garland Heliport, just opened up. They're doing instruction with R-22s. That's why I wanted to bring this to let you see what you'd be flying. And he said, be there on Tuesday morning. They're expecting you to show up. And I said, well, okay. So I did. And I walked in there on a Tuesday morning and traipsed in there. And Mike, the actual guy that started the whole group there at the heliport, which was nothing like it is today. It was just a little prefabricated hut, and walked in there, and just David was there. He was the instructor, and Mike introduced me, and I just said, I want to fly, and I can let David take it from there. But prior to that, I'd like to hear a little bit about just at not even knowing how old he was at that time. I would have never guessed he was 18 years old. He was very sophisticated. He had the British accent,
It's the accent. Yeah, it's the accent.
I probably thought he was a knight. He'd been knighted by the Queen or something. Just very intrigued with him, and he just very, very professional and very mature, and just showed he'd been brought up and raised right, so that kind of thing, to where he had his manners about him. But I'd like to just maybe give you the scene of just talking a little bit about what your journey was as to becoming a pilot, and walk us through that point of that first day, at least of how you got there, and the challenges that you had ahead of you, and a little bit about your family life growing up, and just kind of fill us in.
Yeah.
It's funny. Before I do that, it's one question you're supposed to ask as an instructor to get, one of the motivation is the biggest reason for people to learn. And I don't think I ever asked you, Kevin, why did you want to fly helicopters? So I'm so glad we now know.
Yeah. Because I couldn't. I didn't know how.
That should have been my first question to you when you walked in.
Yeah.
But it's really good to hear that, because it's amazing what brings people to that point. I mean, my first memories when I was 3 years old was always climbing up to trees and pretending I was an airline pilot. So I think in my mind, it was still very glamorous back then, to be an airline pilot and just fly the world on Pan Am and do that sort of thing. But I hadn't really given it much thought, but my room was covered in posters of every kind of, cockpit, Concorde, 747, everything. And I just dreamed of flying. And then, my mother's side of the family is Swiss, and I was born in Switzerland. My father's side is French, so I grew up speaking French. But we heard a lot of stories of one of my cousins that had a terrible mountaineering accident and was rescued by a helicopter. And that kind of got me thinking that maybe that was more exciting than flying from airport to airport, runway to runway, just very, sort of scheduled and structured versus going off and romantically saving people off sides of mountains, of which there are many in Garland. So I don't know how I ended up there. But,
Destined to be the hero you are. Yes.
And then I started reading about Vietnam and studying helicopters and dreaming about helicopters. But it was just such a pipe dream how to get there money-wise. I joined the Army Cadets for a few years, thinking maybe I could join the British Army and go in that way. But there wasn't really a clear route in there. And so when I turned 18, my brother already left to the US to go to university. My sister had already left to South America to go learn Spanish and fall in love with a Colombian man. And so I think our family was just destined to just go off in whatever corner they wanted to explore. And my parents were going to move to Belgium as empty nesters. So I'm like, well, I'm not staying behind in England all by myself. So just hopped on a plane to the US and said, it'll work itself out. I've got 300 pounds in my pocket and and the desire to figure out, something.
And your parents, they were supportive of that. They were proud. I don't know. That's a big leap of faith. So, and as your parent, you're a parent now. Like, what would you have done if Ava had said that?
I think they were, I sort of, at 16, I came to the US as an exchange student for a year because I think my mom said, you've got to go. You just have to leave here for a while and go.
Oh, okay.
She was like, you're bored. Nothing's getting you going in school. And so I said, great idea. And so when I came back, I worked as a graphic designer for a year because that was sort of the path I thought I may have to take. I love to draw and I love to do that to sort of maybe save up money to become a pilot. And so I kind of went to the US with a binder full of pictures thinking, well, maybe I can work some graphic design thing and learn to fly. And then I just made the mistake of taking an introductory flight, kind of like Kevin, and I was hooked. I was like, oh no, this can't wait. Same thing. Little helicopter, doors off over San Francisco, instructor screaming, yeehaw, as he dove down into this valley. I'm like, I'm there. I'm in. I'm all in.
I love it.
So I scrounged up enough dollars to get through the first step, which is the private, and then by then I could sort of convince, to get some money for a commercial and flight instructor and the other things, and it was just a nonstop, roller coaster of a new world, a new exciting world of flying that I didn't know anything, never been in a small airplane. And it was just beautiful flying around the San Francisco Bay Area. And I just had, no idea from one day to the next what the next day would look like. But it was just like, you're 18, it takes care of itself.
I just think that's not something everyone can do. That's obviously, you've got a lot of just a very brave spirit and adventurous. And I think it's amazing. Like, I commend you. I never knew that. All I knew is meeting you in Dallas, Texas. I didn't know. I knew you were from England, but I didn't know you left home with 300 pounds in your pocket and no clue if it's Monday, what's happening on Wednesday. Yeah. So I am, as a type A control freak, I'm like, that's amazing and terrifying all at the same time.
Yeah. It's funny. At that age, you don't have enough experience underneath you to really think, of the consequences of anything. Now in hindsight, I'm like, so many things could have gone wrong. But that was in the family. My parents came to England with less money than I came to America. They loaded us up from Africa. They've spent 4 years in 2 years in Madagascar, 2 years in Algeria. And they were just looking for something green. And they said, well, England's green. Let's just drive to England. And so we show up in England and camp and in a little camping area. My mother ends up getting a job as a French teacher so we can go to this private school for free. And my dad gets a little job, speaks no English, but he gets on and we just sort of rolled with it,
Yeah.
I think in the back of my mind, I could have gone back, I would have been accepted back home if I had to, but it just wasn't
Wasn't in the cards.
It wasn't in the cards, and I don't
Yeah.
remember my parents encouraging me or discouraging me from flying. I think they were glad that I wasn't pursuing the military route. So anything,
Yeah.
you tell them the worst case, and then anything short of that
Right.
is
At
fantastic.
least you were safe. They're like, he's going to be safe in this. So
I'm not sure they knew that. I think my
Well-
mother,
Hey,
she would.
you know what I'm more worried about? With
I don't
300
know.
pounds in your pocket, how did your weight and balance chart look when you got into that helicopter?
Pounds were converted to dollars, and they were pretty powerful back then.
Amazing.
No, I
Yeah.
walked. I flew probably 4 days a week and worked odd jobs, digging trenches and painting houses with my buddies who were in college, and my brother who was also there, just to get by. And then
So your brother, because you mentioned he was in university there in Cal, so you were in the same area of California that your brother was. So you at least had, like, you didn't just move there with nobody. You had somebody there.
right, yes,
Okay,
it wasn't
that's
as
nice.
brave. It wasn't as brave as it sounds. My best.
No, it still
friend-
is, but yeah.
Well, my friend got on in Berkeley, and he said, "Just get your butt out here, and we'll figure it out." And that's all I needed to hear. And my brother had gotten accepted in England, but then the same buddy said, "Just come take an SAT and see how you do." Well, my brother got into Stanford on a lark.
There you go.
Yeah. So he was across the bay. I shared an apartment with 4 people, another friend that was in the Coast Guard, and another student, and we just had a blast. And
Oh, that's amazing.
bright
Well,
letters.
the work ethic that took, when you think about it, to go through a flight training, of 9 months and to do what you did from, private pilot through commercial and into instructor rating. I mean, that takes a lot of ambition and a lot of drive, and better yet, a lot of money. And I know that, like you say, doing whatever you could do to gain some tokens in your pocket in order to pay for it, obviously, once again, goes back to the maturity level I mentioned in the intro, that you were very mature for an 18-year-old kid, that I'm sure, as we know, you had plenty of fun,
For sure.
but you were out to get it done. So
Yeah, it was the first time I could remember academically being just so enthralled with everything about it that I would just a sponge, where I couldn't feel that in school, so I wasn't
Yeah.
naturally academic, but it was so exciting. And you could put the academia with the practice, as you remember, Kevin. I mean, you study up for your lesson and the aerodynamics, and then you go in and you see them happening every day. And it's just, so it was full on, and then, yeah, a little bit of time on the side to try and pay the bills. But you were in it pretty good. I look back at the logbook, and I think you were doing 2 to 3 times a week. Kevin.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big commitment for somebody that's.
Well, I guess a little bit of perspective for the listeners that obviously are not taking flight lessons, but because I do think it's important, when people have this ambition, I want to learn to fly. You mentioned the time and the money that it takes. So, and not to get real down that hole, but maybe just a frame of time for you to move to California till you got your private license. Then you went right into wanting to be an instructor. I mean, how much time did that take? And yeah, I mean, what were you, because I'm assuming you're doing like an hour lessons. Like, what was it? What did it cost you to spend an hour in an aircraft learning?
Yeah, I mean, in 1989, it cost me about $25,000 to get my training. It'd probably be 4 times that now.
Yeah.
You can do it at your own pace. So if you're a businessman with a family like Kevin, you might come in a couple of times a week for 1 flight a day. I was probably going in 5 days a week, twice a day. But really, the flying is the shortest commitment. That all the groundwork that you have to do, the studying, the books, the exams, and you have to keep up or actually stay ahead. And so I did 3 months to get my first license, the private license, which allows you to take passengers, but you can't make a living yet. Then you go on to get commercial, which is a pretty big step, another 100 hours or so. And along the way, you're actually practicing to be an instructor, not because I really wanted to be an instructor, but it was ironically the only entry-level position into the industry to start building your hours. So you're green out of flight school, and the next 2 days later, I'm in Dallas teaching somebody else, which on the one hand is crazy. On the other hand, when I look back on it, I think, I wasn't jaded. I wasn't burned out. It was fresh in my mind. all I had to do was just sort of repeat what had been taught to me. And then along
Yeah.
the way, as I met more people, and Kevin wasn't my first student, so he had the benefit of 6 months of
A little bit of experience. Well, so tell us that. How did you get from? Well, first of all, did you like California? My gut would say that you loved California.
Yeah, I love California because when I was in England and wanted to go as an exchange student, I put down on my application I wanted to go to California, Hawaii, or Florida.
Right.
And because I wanted to surf, I was into windsurfing. And one day my mom came out and said, a family's accepted you in Ohio. And I'm like, where's Ohio? We looked on the map and a friend said, that's Ohio. I'm like, oh, it's Ohio. So anyway, I had a great time in Ohio, but it was a little disappointed. So when I finally made it to California, I saw my first palm tree. I knew I had arrived.
Yeah.
And granted, I think the Bay Area is not kind of what I had pictured as California. It was more like, San Diego and further south. But anyway, It was so beautiful. And so, I thought I was going to be able to stay there and just start flying. But there were no jobs. You took whatever job came along, especially as a brand new instructor. And the small detail of being an illegal alien hadn't really crossed my mind. But that was the reality.
I forgot that part. Yeah. Okay.
But I don't want to give my first boss in trouble, but he didn't even think about it since I spoke English. And I was like, we just, don't ask, don't tell about your immigration status.
So you didn't have to fill out an I-9 or anything. You just gave him your banking information so he could pay you. And that was it, basically.
I came with no bank, no anything. And so he helped me open a bank, and I had a social security number that said not valid for employment. But in the 90s, doesn't matter. You paid your taxes, you got social security.
And it was Texas, so,
I didn't know that there was such a thing to where it said not valid for employment. Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I got a call 2 days after passing my flight instructor license, and he said, I need a pilot tomorrow out here. And so we sat around. I think I've told Kevin this story. We're on the roof listening to Van Halen, sunbathing. And the guy says, there's a guy from Texas wants to talk to you. And so we sat around that evening. I was like, well, what do I know about Dallas? Well, I know the Cowboys. Everybody loves them in England. I know the show Dallas.
Cowboys.
And then my Coast Guard buddy said, and I got a VHS cassette tape of Debbie Does Dallas.
Sold.
So it was decided there and then.
I love it.
Yeah. And so paid for a one-way ticket out here. And if I didn't get the job, I was on my own. And I thought that was a great deal. So,
the owner of the heliport did. He paid to bring you out. Okay.
One way, because I said I don't have any money to buy a ticket. And so we landed here, did some few days of checking out, and then I just took over this guy's apartment, and I was in heaven. As an 18-year-old in England, you would be sharing a little apartment with maybe 4 flatmates.
Yeah.
I had an apartment that cost $200 a month.
Where did you live? I'm just curious. When you first moved in Garland? Okay. Yeah.
In a little apartment complex that I'd never seen anything like it. They had swimming pools. They threw big parties on the weekends, at the leasing office with stations, kegs of beer and food. I was in heaven. All my friends came to visit me from England because they thought this was just the best thing ever.
You're living the American dream in Garland, Texas.
In the land of Gar. And
got a country club membership.
Well, because I was born in Garland. That's where the hospital where I was actually born. It's on the birth certificate. So
that's great.
Yeah. When I first moved to Dallas, I lived in the condo there with Dad, but when I was ready to move out, I moved into the Villages. So I was just curious if you ever lived in did you ever live in the Villages?
Oh, I think it's a rite of passage. Yeah. Everybody lives in the Village. Yeah. Yeah, I lived in the pink ones.
I did too. I lived in the pink ones too. Yeah. With Shane. Yeah. Was it the Gate? That is what it was called. Oh my God. Dad and I could not remember that a few months ago. We were like, wait, the first one was, because I lived in one by myself. It was a 1-bedroom, but it was a good size apartment. To your point. I was like living in this apartment, pretty cheap. And then I moved into the Gate with Shane, the pink ones.
And it was great, but they had the country club and the free, the gym and the barbecue and all that. It was all about getting free beer and free food. Because then the $800 a month that I made as a salary before tax went a long way. If the students and Kevin, among others, would get me dinner And if I could get free beer, or sometimes we'd sneak into the little Hilton nearby and get their free buffet, or, you know, whatever club, you know, of ill repute or otherwise, that would have a food buffet. That was what it was all about.
Amazing. You just learned all the tricks. All
All
right.
the tricks.
So you're living there and the heliport. So dad mentioned, like, I just remember the first time dad took me to the heliport. I just felt like this place is so cool. It was like all these young guys, good looking men that could fly, you know, and they're hanging out. And this is when Almond was working there as well.
Yep, yep.
And he was just so charismatic. Well, you both are very charismatic, and like they knew dad. And I just loved it. It was like, it made me feel so good being at that place. But I don't know if that's what it looked like, Dad, when you went in the first time. It wasn't fancy, but it wasn't a shack. I mean, it was, I don't know, glass, a bunch of glass, and the offices were around the outside, the crappy little coffee maker in that back corner kitchen place. I remember that.
We threw a lot of parties there. It was, I mean, the flying, you know, flying is such a small part of it. It's the community that attracts people to it. And, you know, pilots will just tell stories all day long. I mean, one or two of them are even true, but it's like fishermen, you know, I mean, they talk about every little thing that they did today, about what helicopter they saw. And then that evening, the party, you know, the flying would end and we would just stay on, and it was fun to be around and just share in the good times and, you know, the struggles and get ideas from other people. And then at some point, you know, when you got your private, Kevin, you could come up and bring friends for a flight. And then when you were done for the day, you could have a cold beer, because they always had beer up there. You got
always. Yeah. I do remember that. Yeah. Well, what was it like? So when you mentioned when you did take Dad on as a student, he wasn't your first, you're like halfway through your first year there. So I would just love to, I wish I was a fly on the wall. What was it watching Kevin McClintock walk into the heliport to take his first, or did he go for a lesson, or was it like, I'm here to ask questions, or?
That was very exceptional. That's what, and most of the time people would walk in and, you know, your heart rate's going, this is your dream. You walk in and you think, am I going to really do this? You know, so most people will take just brave enough to take an introductory flight. And then most of the time you don't see them again. But Kevin,
you think because they get nervous, or because they learn like what it will cost, the time, and they're like, I can't?
I think all of the above. Yeah. It's, you let them try the controls a little bit. And some of them, it's not what they think it was going to be. Maybe they've flown an airplane and this is a little bit harder. There's a lot of wind noise and smells and sounds and sights, and some people get nauseous. I mean, there's 100 reasons why I think people will think, I'll think about this and come back. Kevin marched in there with Shelly, and Shelly was very pregnant. So this was in October.
Oh, okay.
So when was Kelsey born?
January. So she would have been like 7 months pregnant then, if it was, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you guys walked in together and you said, I'm ready to start taking lessons. And I gave you the usual spiel of, well, would you like to take a little introductory flight? You're like, no. And then I was like, would you like to? You're like, no. And you were just looking right at me. I'm ready to go.
Well, he had already had his introductory flight with Uncle Joel.
Sunday.
So he was
right. I'd already gotten the taste and the goods. And I remember, getting the brochure to where they had it mapped out on what the first to get to private, what it would cost. And I think I remember it was like $6,850. And I said, okay, I'm in, you know, and I just knew I had to commit and go ahead and make that commitment. As everybody knows, once I'm committed to doing something, it's going to happen. So that's, but anyway, back to, I'm sure I was a little bit, I'm curious to get David's impression when I walked through that door.
I was
what he thought.
Probably a little bit intimidated, only because you were hanging on to every word that I said, which was amazing. So I had to really think. I had to be on my game. I mean, from that day one, it was like I had students that would wander in and then they would cancel and they might come and go. And Kevin was like, hanging on my word. Okay, if I do this, then I'm going to do that. And so I gave him all the books to study up, and you know, we came up with the schedule together. And then Kevin came that first lesson with a big old binder. I mean, all his notes and all his beautifully laminated things, and, you know, engineering drawings.
I can just see it. Yeah.
And a list of questions. And I have my little whiteboard, and I was like, here we go. I mean, I absolutely kid you not. I studied up the night before Kevin was coming in to be my student for Kevin, because I'm like, okay, well, today we're going to do this lesson. And it's been a little while now, and especially the aerodynamics and the technical stuff, because I knew you were an engineer. I said, I better be on my game. It was great.
Because like he's going to ask these questions. Like you
Yeah.
knew that. Yeah.
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 You can ask a lot of good questions, and then I need to learn the answers.
So is knowing you probably covered all different types of students? I mean, is that your preference, or is it like, someone maybe in between Kevin and the guy that couldn't give two shits less is really the best place to be?
No, this was great. I mean, the only student that would have been different from Kevin would have been one that was at the same schedule, but that was really shooting to be a career pilot, like myself, right? So maybe a young guy that's like, as soon as I graduate, I'm going to go on and fly helicopters. I knew Kevin was doing this for his own, reasons, but not to give up being an engineer and become a helicopter pilot. So the motivation was a bit different in terms of sort of the goals and preparing them to then go on. And I think at the time, Kevin, I don't remember you mentioning being a CFI. So I think being a flight instructor kind of came down the road. So in my mind, you're going to be a private pilot, and private pilots do it so that they can fly for fun, take friends up, go out to a lake, whatever, as you ended up doing. I mean, your commitment that you put in as a business owner and family man for those amount of times, and you always came in first thing in the morning. You were always there before I got there. Really annoying.
He wanted that good coffee in the back kitchen room.
No, it was great.
There
Kevin
was
had
no good coffee in those
there.
little white styrofoam cups.
Yeah, those white star. You were out there pre-flighting with your little oil rag and doing everything.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, some people come in and you think when they got the reality of what it was, maybe that deterred them. And I think that is a misconception, because when I would tell people, I was so proud when my dad was learning to fly. I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I was, and I'm living in Florida at the time. So we're living in Florida, and he's doing all of this while we're not there. But he would talk on the phone and tell us about it. And I would tell people, like, well, my dad's, learning to fly helicopters. And then eventually I got out there and dad was able to take me, or maybe you did. I don't know. I got up in a helicopter, and I think most people think when they think helicopter, they think the news helicopters, they think military helicopter, and these are all big aircrafts. And so it is much different when you are, someone like dad learning to fly. You're flying in it. You guys keep saying this, but like, Robinson 22 is a two-seater. So I'm trying to set the stage here, and dad will have to post a picture of both the two-seater you had and the four-seater. But, the seats literally hit the back of a wall. There's nothing behind it but the end of the aircraft and your little bubble. And then there's no doors. So, cause it's hot, and you're, when you're up, it's loud. Yeah. And it's small. Like, you are one with the air is what I guess I'm trying to set the stage here, because I don't think people really see that often. You don't see that size of helicopter very often, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, it can certainly be intimidating for your first time, and it's a very different sensation, pushed back in your seat like you're on an airplane. You're pulled up almost from the top of your head, because the rotor's pulling you up. And so for some people, it's a little unsettling, because you feel like you're really dancing, and Kevin can attest to the first time you learn to hover, which is the hardest thing you do. And you do that later on. I mean, first you start just flying in the air like an airplane. When you start to hover, it's the most frustrating, experience. It can take you hours and hours just to sort of master that. And, Kevin wasn't immune to that like anybody else, to those frustrations. And that can be, for me as an 18-year-old, maybe I didn't have a lot of experience in other things that I had mastered. So it was just one more little thing. But I think for older people that have mastered what they do for a living, business owners, businessmen, this little darn helicopter is just kicking my butt, and I'm so pissed off at it. I mean, was that kind of your experience, Kevin? Did you ever feel like giving up? Like, I don't think I can get this. Like, or is it, like, I'm going to get this. I will get this.
Yeah, it was, I don't think give up was there, but and that I can compare it really to anything that you try to be good at, for sure. But the frustrating part, like you said, was, I was disappointed more in not probably achieving a level that I'm sure you thought I should be or not. I was worried about that, but I've told many people the story of learning to hover a helicopter is one of the most difficult things. I think it's easier to get thrown into water and never know how to swim and figure that out quicker than how to hover a helicopter. And there's no doubt about that. And I think people don't understand that and maybe gaming people, and that wasn't really that big at that point in time, but everybody knows how sensitive using a joystick is. And think about that. You're moving a stick and translating it, fractions of an inch to make it do what it needs to do. So in trying to hold it in one spot, those fractions of an inch become, now you're into the British standards of, you're talking about millimeters. You ain't talking about fractions. You're talking about millimeters. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I left very frustrated. I was so proud when I had a good hover day, and then I could go back and come back 2 days later and it would be a shit hover day. I mean, it just broke your morale that you think you're getting so close to doing that solo flight, and then you realize you're just not there yet. So it's no different than Dave jumping on a windsurfer or, behind a boat or anything else that you try to do, riding a motorcycle. Some days you do it better than other days, driving a car. But it was tough. It's definitely, it's like to say, not everybody can do it. That's what's kind of cool about it. But,
yeah.
And I'm telling you, just to kind of break the not knowing why I even started to fly, other than getting in a helicopter and flying and realizing that's what I wanted to do. The reason I kept moving forward to CFI was I wasn't going to quit until I knew and realized I could put that thing on the ground. Coming to a power recovery as a private and a commercial, that did not satisfy me. I needed to learn how to plow the dirt with it and do running takeoffs, and better yet, bring it down and put it on the ground. And knowing that, at least in practice or in demonstration, I could walk away from it. That may not have happened in actual flight, but no doubt about it. It's a skill that you're always driving for perfection, and perfection rarely shows up. But when it does, it's exhilarating, So
yeah.
And did you ever have a student after your CFI? Did you go on to teach?
Oh yeah, I mean, my logbook's filled with a time, and I I think Connie was one of my first students, so I worked her, and then I'd gone back through my logbook just in preparing for a number of different things, but yeah, it's quite a bit. I mean, at 800 hours, kind of when I dropped out, 807 hours.
That's a lot.
Just how much time, that took me. And most of it was flying around in the 44, or better yet, giving instruction to others in the 44s, doing some different, checks and biennials and things like that. And Harlan's, I did his, I actually got to take, I can't remember Jim's name, but he was 65 years old. He was a Gulfstream pilot, and he wanted to learn to fly a 22, and I gave him and took him to transition, and he bought a 22, but he ended up being their mechanic for years. But it definitely, I'm glad I did that, because I can appreciate what you went through, and it's definitely difficult, and it's definitely, you're on point constantly. I mean, I don't know that I was ever really, and we've talked about this, I know, afterwards, but I mean, it wasn't about being nervous or not feeling confident in that I could do this. I think it's just one of those experiences, like you say, that, okay, now it's your turn to give back to somebody that's wanting to learn, and show them the best path of doing that. And, it made my day after going through and getting my CFI when I think Ahmed asked me for my binder, because he wanted to make copies of my binder. So,
Yes.
And David's right. I learned
Wait, why
really
did he?
easy.
Why did he want to make copies of your?
Because
your
nobody
study
ever
binder.
seen anything like that. I
Your
mean,
Your
he
study
wanted it,
binder, so
yeah,
he could
and then
like
Candy
show
was
others.
Can you get Kevin's binder? I need that. She was training for her CFI. I really want Kevin's binder.
Yeah.
So Amon
that's
finally
amazing,
just made
Dad.
copies of it. But I was the type of guy that would go and I'd read things, and then I would go into my computer and I would just I'd word perfect it to make my own notes and get the definitions of the aerodynamic maneuvers. And I would just make sure that I had that at beck and call. So I was prepping myself for my satchel when it came time to have a CFI to where I could throw it over my shoulder and have all my training gear. I was going to train somebody how to ride that lawnmower, even though it was a helicopter that
Oh my God, that's
could
amazing.
just chop the air. But
Yeah. Well,
I love that. I love the learning part of it. And flying around just in dead airspace or passing those check rides, that was one of the best days. 3 times happened that I was just so appreciative of both David and Amon both, and how much they let me into their world, and vice versa. We let them into our world, but just how close. And that's something to talking about family units. They were a part of our family.
I was going to say, I'm curious. So how was it? Who finally said, well, let's go grab a beer? Because I'm sure that's how the friendship started. And was it like dad going, I like this kid, because you were a kid. Let me buy you a beer. And by the way, you weren't old enough to drink yet. So
I was going to say, I had my friend's British fake ID for
Did you? Yeah.
3 years.
So I guess tell me that, because all I ever remember is just whenever I did show back up in Texas, you were just part of the crew. Like,
yeah.
So
Well, likewise with you, you were, I mean, it didn't really sink into me, the family dynamic, because every time there was a party or a concert or a trip, you and Shane were there.
Yeah.
So you were just like the not even little siblings. I mean, just slightly younger. Shane's older than you, right? So
Shane's 17 months older than me. So if we're 10 years apart, you and him are like 8.5.
Yeah. After a point, we weren't really that far apart. We went on trips together. I think what happened was at the beginning, as a new instructor, a little bit, unsure of myself, I try to keep a little bit of distance with my students.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to keep it really professional. I thought that's what I had to
What you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah, we were trained about what professionalism means, right, Kevin? When you learn to be an instructor and all these things, and I think there was a little fear of me if I let my guard down and became a little too friendly, I might not be strict enough, and then that could have bad consequences. So I think those early days were just sort of like pretty strict flying. And I think the first time that I remember was the first Duncan splash, and so probably that next summer we'd probably known each other for maybe. Well, you had them in the summer, right? So probably
it would have been June of 91.
So,
yeah.
Hey, we're having this big party, and you guys should come. And Armand had arrived by then, because he came a little after, and we showed up and we're like, oh, this is a whole other side to Kevin we've never seen.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to set the stage a little bit, because we've actually have neighbors up here that talk about they used to have an annual Labor Day party, and they're like, you got to come. We have a band. We've got food. There's all kinds of drinks. I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm very accustomed to this scene.
Yeah.
And I rolled into this party and I was like, this is not a party.
This is no party.
and Chris was just like, don't say that. Like, you don't be an asshole. And I was like, for as much as I've heard about these parties, I was like, this is not a party. Because the Duncan Splash, I just want to set the stage. Duncan Splash is, and Dad, you set the stage because you created it, but what was the Duncan Splash?
Well, it was a party that came out of a bunch of us employees and people that were around as well, creating a 3-on-3 basketball team to go downtown Dallas on what was called the Hoop It Up, where it was a weekend tournament of 3-on-3 play. And we did that for like 2-3 years. And then after that, and just kind of, number one, just the hassle of getting downtown. Number two, hassle of not really being good enough to be in the competition we were amongst. We decided to throw our own 3-on-3 tournament. So we had a 3-on-3 tournament basketball going on during the day, that in the first year it had, I think, maybe 8 to 10 teams, 8, I think, if we were lucky. And, we played on one hoop out there in Forney, and we decided to make it just it's a round robin, or better yet, double elimination tournament. So it takes quite a bit of time, depending upon the number of teams. And then we would throw a pool party after, and just, have drinks and just kind of hang out. And as it grew and it got bigger and bigger, we always had barbecue going. We'd bring in some entertainment every now and then. And
it turned into 3 courts. By the end, you
Yeah,
played.
then
There were
yeah,
3.
it went from 10 teams to 30 teams. I mean, we had 300 people at the very last. After
And,
10 years, we had 300 people
and you
attending that
drew.
Duncan Splash.
I'm gonna brag on you. You ended up drawing some teams that were play at the Hoop It Up out to Forney, Texas.
Oh yeah,
Remember that year those 3 big black guys showed up
oh yeah.
as a team, and we were like, well, they're obviously gonna win, and they did. And then I think they came back at least one more year. And
Yeah, I can't remember. One of them, we opened it up when we saw the height of the players that were coming. We ended up having a dunk competition at the end of it prior to going to the pool. And one of those large players, he went up and he won the dunk competition, but he went up and got hung up, and he came down and he landed flat on his back. And I mean, he was not moving. And I went in and I said, man, we got to get a doctor. And the only doctor we had there was Jerry Wilson, and he was a vet. So I went up, I said, Doc, I said, Jerry, I said, we got to get, there's a player down and he is huge and he's not moving. I said, I've told him I've got a doctor here, so I'm coming to get you. So just make sure that you know that you're a doctor, and you are a doctor. You're smart. You're a smart man. I think it's harder to get in vet school than it is med school. But I said, so he went down there and looked at him, and he wasn't moving. And I went and he had a little scuff on the back of his head, and I went and got the emergency Band-Aid kit, and we wrapped him up. And he finally got up. We had some ibuprofen, and I didn't know what to do. I thought we were going to have to go get an X-ray or something. And this was, I think, the last year that we actually did this, maybe one after that. And I said, well, Doc Wilson's here. He's going to take care of you. And he looked up and he just smiled. He said, well, that's good to know. Jerry went down there and acted, put his head down on his chest and listened to his heartbeat and kind of gave him the once over. And anyway, we ended up pulling him up. He was fine, a couple beers, and he was feeling just
golly.
I think Jerry had something else in his truck or something. I think he had I don't know if we gave him an injection or
a steroid.
Shot him up like a horse at the Derby,
Holy shit. Little cortisone.
But,
who knows?
So the best trophy of the whole tournament was the red brick trophy. We always had a red brick, and that was for the whoever lost the tournament. So
yeah.
Anyway,
but it was a great part. I wanted to set that. It was great, and I can only imagine you, David, rolling into that environment because
unbelievable. I mean, you came up this driveway, and Tommy Jackson, the neighbor, they provided the barbecue.
Oh yeah.
But at his gate, it said trespassers will be prosecuted, survivors will be shot.
Yeah.
And so we made a right. It didn't go straight, and we pulled out.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right. Because
wow, it's just like nothing I'd ever seen. I mean, there was just food and there was beer and there was it was just this beautiful, welcoming sight. And, Shelley in her Lone Star bikini and a cowboy hat. And I mean, I brought my parents there once. They literally flew in for my dad's 40th.
I remember them being there. Yeah.
They were jet lagged. They literally came off the plane and said, we can't miss this party. We're going straight to Forney. And in fact, when they got there, they lay down to take a little nap in your room. And my dad still talks about it to this day. The amount of meat, you've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
The amount of beer. And then everybody singing. And I think Shane was up there. He had a little rap phase where he was doing some rapping and some karaoke or joining in with the band and the basketball going on and the music going on. And then this huge thunderstorm came through and just soaked everybody. And we somehow made it home. But it was a whole new world and a whole new side of you, Kevin, that I'd never seen. And from then on, that was it. I mean, from then on, we came to the lake and we went, and then Misty, my future wife, but my girlfriend at the time, taught you guys to scuba dive.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so once you guys all got certified.
In the Jackson's pool.
In the
Jackson's pool. Yeah. Jackson, he's trying to give you guys really, really bad advice.
Really bad advice. Oh my God. And that was a whole thing because that was Dad and Shelley were the adults that were learning, and then it was me and Shane and our 2 friends, Cody and Tommy. So there were 4 kids, and Missy would come to the house and do the lessons, the education piece, the written stuff, and then we would get in the pool for the practicals. And I don't know if you know this story, but the night we had to take the final exam, this is when I knew I was a very terrible test taker because I got so nervous I threw up, David, like threw up. And I just remember Dad being like, well, you have to take this test. And better yet, you have to pass this test. And I was like,
no, no daughter of mine is going to get a
no,
95.
there was no sympathy or anything. It was like, you got to pull it together because, you know, and you, I mean, he was like, you can do it. But I was just, and I passed, but like I barely passed. And I've always, anyways, it wasn't.
I think Misty gave you extra credit somehow.
I mean, she may have, like, I think, and she knew I was so nervous. And then obviously we went and tested out, and I knew how to do this stuff. I just was, I was so nervous.
You know what the takeaway from that is, James?
I have no idea.
You didn't have a binder.
I didn't have I did not have a personal creative binder. I only had the binder that was given to us as part of the package. You probably had your own binder. You know,
I did. You bet I did.
You could have what you could have done was brought me into your circle and helped, but no. Anyway, so we did that, and you were on the Cozumel trip, right?
Yeah. So as soon as she got that part certified, we all took a big trip together. Yeah. And we went to Cozumel, and we dove during the day with you guys. I mean, young teenage scuba divers in Mexico. It's very, I mean, it's overwhelming on a boat, and you're drifting. And then at night we danced on the stage at Carlos and Charlie's.
Yeah. Oh, I loved that place.
I got up and did it all over again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was 13 because I think 13 was the minimum age to actually get certified. And I was legal to do it, but I was as young as you could be.
So it was challenging. I mean, it's challenging, and it's very rule oriented and equipment intensive. A little bit like flying, really. I mean, you've got to know the sequence of things. And lucky you're with Misty, and so she's looking out for you guys, because Misty had spent 2.5 years teaching people to dive in the Cayman Islands and Ireland, and so she kind of knew how to kind of keep things calm. But it was just amazing to me how you guys were just part of the family. We just traveled together. We went to concerts together. You guys, I mean, just invited me into your lives, and I just didn't feel lonely at all after having first come here, wondering, I'll just be here for a few months and then go back to California because I didn't know anybody. And, and my parents loved coming, and everybody loved coming to Texas because they could just feel the good vibe.
Yeah.
And, it was amazing.
Yeah, it was, I mean, we have so many memories. And I do remember Dad telling me, though, like that you had, when you moved on and you started flying for Care Flight. So maybe talk to us a little bit about that transition in your career, and what was that like? Because I don't know that I've really sat down and talked to you about what that was like. And I just remember you making that change.
Yeah, that was the goal. And it was very hard to get there because I think in my mind, the sooner I could get this thing going, the bigger advantage I would have. Like, it was a zero-sum game, and I have this conversation with Ava. I'm sure you do with your children. It's like, just don't be in a rush. There's plenty of jobs out there. There's only one position in this country that has only one job opening, and that's the president. The other one has multiple jobs. So if, don't be in a rush to get there. If you don't get this one, you'll get a different one. But in my mind, I needed to kind of, do this thing fast. And so the age kind of worked against me, I think. You had Vietnam era pilots, old graybeards that would look at me and joke that it was, bring your kid to work day or whatever, I'm like, no, I'm actually going to be the one teaching you.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was a stepping stone. So from then it was like, build up your hours and build up bigger helicopters. And I went to the Bahamas and flew tours down there to get some time in slightly larger aircraft. And then I went to the Gulf of Mexico, all along Louisiana and Texas coast. And you'd go for a week and then you'd come home for a week. So driving every week back and forth, and you'd live on the oil rigs and with helicopters, and you'd fly all around oil rigs supporting them. And then towards the end, I got to fly out to all the super tankers and the seismic exploration boats, which is really fun. You're landing on pitching decks, looking for a boat that's moving hundreds of miles offshore. That was the most challenging flying I'd done. But after a while, the driving back and forth, to Dallas every week, it was just getting tiring. And then I'd finally, I think, built enough hours out where Care Flight, which was my goal. As soon as I moved here and I saw Care Flight, I'm like, I'm flying for those guys. So, 10 years later, it took to get the hours and the experience, which I'm glad I had, because it was a whole different world of flying than I had been used to. Maybe not the hardest flying in the world, but managing nurses, paramedics, police, fire, incident managers, air traffic control, everything. And then very sick and nasty, accidents and patients, all of that can be very distracting. So the flying has to be second nature, and all the rest of it has to be your focus. But
Yeah,
it
it's
was,
almost like I would imagine like all this like chaos and trauma happening, and you just have to stay focused on that very important task of flying an aircraft, right?
yeah, you're
Yeah.
there. I mean, you're there to serve the paramedics and the nurses to do their job. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no heroism, no heroic antics, but generally the weather's bad when people get into car wrecks. So usually you're going out, bad weather at night. Um, but it was super challenging. Again, it was another one of those things. I'm like, this is amazing. This is what I've always wanted to do. And there's a great bond because kind of like at the heliport, you spend a 12-hour shift for 7 days in a row with some of the same crew. So you get to know each other, you get to help them out, get the aircraft ready, kind of like working at a fire station.
Yeah, and you're waiting, right? You're kind of waiting for it to happen. So
you're waiting. Yeah, there's always stuff. You're always going out with a helicopter and training fire departments on how to land you. You're helping in the emergency room if you want to. I mean, there's always you can take a safety nap, but other than that, you're pretty busy.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
yeah, it was very cool. Then you did 7 nights in a row, and then you're off for 7 days, which was great. So you got to go on vacation, and then you did 7 days in a row, and then off, and that was fun for the first few years. But and then our daughter Ava was born, and then I did that for 3 more years. But I started to really feel that kind of being gone a lot, 7 in a row. And then when I got home, Misty was exhausted. She's like, "Here's your baby."
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
she
Have
was
fun.
just starting. Yeah, she had just graduated law school and was like building her way up in her law firm and law career. So it was a hard balance to keep. And I felt like I was kind of missing out on the experience of being a dad because I was gone so much. And I think it was the first time in my life where I was like, I think it might be time to take a little breather, from this flying thing that I've been doing since I was 18, and just kind of slow down a bit, enjoy things for the day to day, enjoy, I didn't really think of it as a stay-at-home dad yet. It was more like a sabbatical, but it was too good.
I mean, I remember, like, if I think back to you, I just feel like you were someone that was always meant to be a dad. Because I remember when Kelsey was born, dad had started before she was born, but you really watched Kelsey grow. I mean,
Yeah.
you were around when she was a baby, and you were always so good with her, and just you like, for being a young guy, you didn't shy away from being around a small infant, a small child. I just remember that, and you
Oh,
being so good with us kids, but even especially her being so small. So I feel like you were meant to be a dad. So what
yeah,
was that like? I guess how old were you when Ava was born?
I was 32. And
Okay,
Misty
so
was
similar
35.
to me. Okay, because
Yeah.
I was 31 was when Reese was born, and
Okay.
I was 2 months shy of 35 when Parker was born. So, we were like old enough to know better, but still now you look back, you're like, man, 30 was young.
Right. Still young enough to crawl around on our knees and it doesn't hurt, and lift them
Yeah,
over our shoulders. And yeah,
right.
I didn't picture being a dad at all, in those early years at all. I didn't grow up with that. And then one day we would sort of like, Misty's like, well, let's think about this because I'm 35. We can't just put this off forever if we want to do this. And we're like, well, cool. Let's have one. That way it won't change our lifestyle too much.
Right.
That's what you think, right? At the time.
Right.
We'll just do exactly what we're doing. We'll just bring her along.
And for a while you can, it's
can,
like we did that Dad knows, he was there for a lot of it, like Reese in the car seat, and you're like, yeah, life really hasn't, we're still at the bar, she's sitting at the bar with us, and we're still having a good time. And
For sure.
for a while it is about the same, but it changes quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember, I didn't get much parenting advice from my parents, but I do remember my dad saying, so long as we were having a good time, you guys would look at us and you were having a good time. Like they would go to the beach in Africa with friends and just sit there with a picnic. And that was it. Like, it's up to you guys now to have fun. We're having fun. And we're like, oh, well, okay. And so I kind of took that on. I was like, let's just do what we do with our friends. And go to, we have to travel a lot just to see family. So on top, she was gaining that experience just purely because family was spread out in South America, California, Miami, Europe, so that automatically was a couple of trips a year. So she was flying on airplanes all the time just to go see family. And it didn't change that much. But I think maybe I was still that kid that had gone straight into flying, and now I was able to be a kid again. And maybe partly with Kelsey too, I was like, oh, this is really fun. I could just be
Mm-hmm.
myself. I have to
Yeah.
always trying to pretend like I'm older when I'm flying, more mature than I am. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
and be accepted. Now I'm like, I can be a kid and,
Can just
and
be me. Yeah. Yeah.
just be me. Yeah, it's fun. And as a dad, you can definitely get away with it because you're like, well, I'm just being a dad. And, oh,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right. I'm having fun. They're having fun. Like you said, if you're having fun,
Yeah,
they're having fun. Yeah.
yeah, it was really fun. I, it's
That's
amazing,
interesting.
Kevin, listening to your podcast earlier about how much back and forth you guys were doing. I mean, I can only imagine how you work that logistics because it wasn't apparent for me. You guys were there whenever anything was going on,
Yeah.
like you lived here. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you must have been coming what 3-4 times a year to Texas or
Three
at
times
least?
a year. And when, like you said, when we had trips, like we were always part of the equation. Dad wasn't going anywhere on a family thing that we weren't included on. It wasn't like we were not included. I mean, the only time there were times where he and Shelly would go on trips alone, but like that should happen. Like I'm a big believer that you and your spouse should go on trips by yourself. And
Yeah.
my running joke is, people are like, oh, where are you going on vacation? I'm like, no, 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 no. I go on trips with my children. I go on vacations with my husband or my friends. I was like, this is
Right.
not a vacation. I mean, it's fun and I love it, but like, you're still, you can't really just cut loose and be who you want to be as a person when you're still responsible for your kids being there. So that's always my running joke. But yeah, we were always included in those times. And, I think that's what's always been so unique. And what we try to share in this podcast is that even though we were apart, we were always just like so close, and maybe that was because Dad was always trying to make the most of very little time. He was packing in as much fun as we could have. So when we were there, it was always fun. It was just, even when we weren't able to party, life was a party. So, and I mean that in a very good way, but it was funny. Dad told me you said that he was like, David didn't even realize. I'm like, that's pretty cool to hear your perspective on it. Cause I just assumed that you were, you did know that, but
I mean, I knew it. Of course, you mentioned your ex-wife and kind of the geography a little bit, but it was, I didn't have a perspective as an 18-year-old either, kind of like
yeah,
that. So I just thought it was just kind of what happens. I mean, people live over here a little bit, people live over here, or I think if you and Shane had never been at these events that we were on, then I would have been like, well, hey, where are the kids?
where are these kids?
Yeah.
Where are these kids you talk about? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that is there was always so much going on. And I mean, it's like you said, it's kind of surprising with everything that we would do as a unit when they were there, which was primarily summers, Christmas, spring break, and otherwise, if possible. But, in springtime, it was always headed to the mountains and going skiing at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Summertime was doing, and things obviously evolved, but it was primarily, as me working, that always gave me a lot of opportunities, having my own business to do what I could afford to do, flying a helicopter being one of them,
Mm-hmm.
owning two of them being another two examples of that. But it's just, there was the ability to do those kind of things. And that's pretty unnormal, I think, at that point in time for a lot of people. But we didn't hesitate to pack up and go, head down to a lake somewhere, or head to Cozumel, or take the kids diving, or, I'll never forget the story that we went on our first trip without you guys, going to Florida, Destin, and we dove that summer,
Mm-hmm.
only to, we asked for a dive master if they would go, and they didn't have one. So we were on our
Oh
own,
God.
and get down there and, go through, how finicky I was just getting my ears to go through equilibrium and try to get those things. That was always a problem for me. So get down there. By the time I'm down there, the kids are already done. They're down there and scurrying around and going here, there, and everywhere. And I was in a dead panic, just trying to keep them corralled. And every time I would move or try to get us to follow some sort of a compass and a tracking to know how I could get back where we left. And it was just a nightmare underneath there. And then we got into a school of amberjack, and that was kind of cool, in descending and trying to come up. And we found the rope, and we're coming up, and we get to the top, and it's not our boat. it's
Terribly sorry, wrong dinghy.
It's somebody else. It's a different boat. So
They're all the
I'm
same.
looking at the surface, trying to figure out where we are, and hell, we're 100 yards or more away from this thing. So
Yeah.
we get back down there, and I mean, we didn't stay on the surface of the water. We just went down there, and I saw where we had to go and took a heading. And I mean, I was so wore out after that. I said, we're never going back without Misty. This was too much work.
Kevin, I feel the same way, man. I've been married many years now.
It's too much work. Yeah.
Yeah. She sorts out the equipment. She taught Ava to dive when she was 8.
Yeah.
Oh,
Crazy.
wow. Yeah.
Tiny little
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, it's not
Well,
like a
yeah.
real. Yeah, and even that, Ava was like, I'm never going diving without Mom. Yeah.
So obviously a podcast listener and a family man. Tell us a little bit more of your family dynamic and the struggles that you can relate to in listening to our story. Not that it's the same, but just, I can't imagine that she's already graduating college. I mean, and as I know you, and I remember those days where you always celebrated her birthday each summer with the summer party,
Oh,
you know, kind of the same June tagline as the Duncan Splash after those quit, and just how successful those parties were, and just went all out with regards to that. But I mean, it's just hard to believe that, you know, well, number one, it's hard to believe you're 53 years old, but number two, just that she's now out of school and with a serious boyfriend, and Misty's very successful. And I remember her, you know, going through law school and just, you know, watching you guys date to get married. And that's it's just kind of cool to see that, you know, that how we've really just gotten to witness, and sometimes more often during the years than others, but just see you grow up, and better yet, become what you are today, and have a great family. So
yeah, it's not a journey.
Congratulations, but I'd like to hear a little bit about just, you know, just it's got to be tough too, just getting a girl through college.
No,
Believe me, I know that.
I don't know. You know, at the beginning, I started reading the books, you know, the what to expect when expecting, and it scared the hell out of me. I'm like, what am I doing? Just put the book down and just rely on. I had a wonderful childhood. I mean, I don't, you know, and so I'm like, worst case, I will just, not worst case, but if in doubt, just
do what they did.
You know.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't quite work for the new generation or where we're living, then just adjust. But I didn't want to overthink it. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I felt like I was missing out. And so when I decided, I just asked Misty, I was like, I would just love to just stay at home for just a little while and just really soak this up. And then, you know, see if I still want to do this flying thing. It's been almost 20 years. And we were just having so much fun. And we started, Misty quit the big firm. And so I started building her little law firm across the street. And so I started managing that so I could still have some income. And then we got some rental properties. So I'm like, I'm still, you know, I'm still earning, and I'm still doing something that's for me and for the family financially. But I'm also, you know, it just works for us. Like nobody asked me to do that. I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. I think if I had been a different place in my career or a different age, maybe, you know, I might have felt some resentment or like, oh, you know, some sadness at leaving something behind. I was kind of relieved, which is a bit surprising because all I ever wanted to do was fly. And so that told me that I got everything out of it that I wanted to. The challenges were gone. I could keep doing it for the next 30 years, but it wouldn't really change. So regardless, I was ready for a change. So why not take a little breather? And then we just had so much fun together. I was 4 years separate from my sister, so I didn't really pay any attention to how she grew up. And so it was really fun to raise a little girl, you know, and learn what little girls love to do and all their friends. But also I just did me. And so we would climb, we would get muddy. We would just do the things that I knew to do. I only sang her, you know, big hair band ballads to put her to sleep because I didn't know any children's songs. Every rose has its thorn.
Every
And
rose has,
patience
yeah.
comes in roses. Yeah, she would just rock to sleep. But I remember taking her to a haircut when she was still young enough where I had to take her, and the guy was like, "What do you listen to? Let me guess, Taylor Swift." And then she goes, "Nickelback, Theory of a Dead Man, some Buffett." And he's like, "You spend too much time with your dad."
No, it's great. It's great. I love that.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
fun. And then before I knew it, it was high school, and we had. So behind me is the crow's nest, the house that Kevin built, the Taj McClintock. So we built
Yeah.
this
Yep.
little playhouse. Mostly at the beginning, I was working nights, so I'd sleep here during the day, and then it turned into this game room, and it was the safe place that Ava and all her friends could come to in their teens and hang out. If they had a drink, if they whatever, so long as they didn't get in a car and go anywhere, this
Yeah.
was kind of a hangout place. So I really got to enjoy all her friends and just relive that through her eyes, and it was just a blast. I mean, the kids were just so cool. I didn't grow up with any TV or anything like that as a kid. We didn't have TV, we didn't have telephone all my childhood, so I kind of replicated that. We were just gonna not spend time in front of TV or with phones or computers. We were just gonna play
That's awesome.
outside. And so anyway, yeah, it was a blast. And all of a sudden off she goes to college, and and
4
now
years
she's
later.
off to Washington DC for a year. So
Oh wow. What is she going to school for then?
she studied journalism.
Okay.
Yeah, she loves to write and all that kind of good stuff. And
So she's moving to DC after graduation.
she has a job offer for a year with a legal nonprofit called the Institute of Justice, and she's going to go kind of get training in there. It's a full-time
Yeah.
job, and she's hoping then they have an office in Austin that she could maybe come back to Austin and kind of start that division that they don't have in Austin. But that's first, it's job number one. It doesn't have to be the first job.
That's
is not
right.
a forever job.
Look, she's
Yeah,
getting a job out
exactly.
of school, and that is a success. So that's amazing.
Yes, motoring under her own steam, as Misty would say, is it starts January 1st, 2026.
There you go. There you go.
Start saving.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say congratulations to successfully raising what sounds like a very smart and capable and successful child. So that's huge.
Yeah.
It's
That's
a team
huge.
effort. It takes a village.
It takes a village. This is so true.
It
So
absolutely
true.
does.
Yeah.
Well, likewise, I look forward to meeting your children one of these days.
I hope so. I sure hope so. Yeah, I would love that. I would love for them to meet you, and I would love to see Misty again. And I hope she's doing well. You guys have your own firm and all that.
Yeah, everything's
That's
great.
awesome.
We had a cancer scare 5 years ago, but she's just about out of the woods after past the
Good.
5-year mark. So
Good. That's awesome.
yeah, we're super lucky. And,
Yeah, grateful for that.
yeah, now we're in empty nester mode, so it's a whole new chapter in life that I've
Yeah,
never been in before.
that is a new chapter.
So what's next? Are
It
you guys
doesn't
gonna?
suck, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. You think you'll start traveling more, or what? I guess what's next for you guys then?
I
For
don't-
you?
I've never been here before, I've never
Yeah.
been, as a friend said, it's great when you're empty nesters because it's like when you're young again, you're just not broke. So,
Yeah.
so now we're,
That's a good point.
I like
Good
that.
point.
Yeah.
so
That's
we got
true.
a camper van, we got our little mini Mojo bus. And so like Kevin, we're exploring, places we've never been to and, just in this country, because we travel everywhere just to keep up with family. Sometimes
Yeah.
we feel like there's a state park down the road that we've never been to, and we've gone all over the place. So enjoying that, and for the first time, I'm not like rushing out after a career or raising a daughter. So it's kind of me time now. It's all about me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
You're getting to do the late, what is it, Dad? Late adulthood, past middle adulthood age. So you're winning. As far as I'm concerned,
Yep.
you are winning.
Middle-age crisis.
I've got 11 more years, right? Is it
Yeah.
64?
Yeah, if you're
Yeah,
already
there you go, 60. Yep.
I mean, if you're already there, then like I said, you can count it a success. So
Well, I'm keeping my mind open now. It's not all about flying, and it's not all about raising children. It's not, so now it's like, it's all about, whatever comes while
What's
I keep
next?
doing the
Yeah.
things I'm doing. Yeah.
that's right.
Mhm.
That next hobby.
Mhm.
Maybe you'll start a podcast. You never know.
Well, I will start a band with Kevin, but
Well, there you go. Dad's been on the drums, man.
Yep.
He's working hard on those drums. So
Yep.
we have to do the matinees though, Kev, because I don't stay up very late. So my dreams.
Well,
of
that's
being a rock
okay.
star-
That's okay. Yep, I hear you. Best thing about the matinee is right afterwards is the buffet.
We'll go down to
So
VFW.
we can play the afternoon show. That's exactly right.
We may
That's
have to
great.
change our
Exactly
music
right.
selection a little bit from, hard rock.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Anyway, we do want to kind of close down with a couple just silly questions. What's a fun fact that nobody knows about you, Dave? I bet I know them all.
Ah,
There's a challenge.
Oh man. I was on a breakdance crew in England,
Oh, I did know that.
straight out of Sussex.
I remember you breakdancing at a couple Duncan splashes.
oh, I would love to see that. I don't remember that.
Oh yeah.
Did I breakdance at Duncan Splash to rock and roll?
Well, you would do it in an apartment. I mean, you would eventually get down there if the surface was right and you could spin, you would.
If the music
You know.
moved you, come on,
Yeah.
Yeah, no carpet
Get
burns,
down
please.
there.
It has to be linoleum.
Yeah, there you go.
Amazing.
So, yeah, I was on a breakdance crew, straight out of Sussex, baby. Straight
Oh,
out.
There
baby.
you go.
You keep a flag handy because you never know when you have.
You
to
never
plant it
know when you're going to
somewhere.
need it. Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
What's one of your favorite? Being that I like your, starting at the beginning of the podcast and then at the end, kind of meeting in the middle. What's your takeaway? How do you feel the message from Jamie and I has been in delivering that podcast?
Oh, it's so wonderful. I mean, I love it. It just makes me laugh out loud and, get a little tear here and there. And just the banter is just so fun. I mean, I just put my little, earpod in. I'm walking around the garden just laughing. But it's really touching and it's just really sweet. And it takes a lot of, I mean, I've been nervous for a week to do this. It's a lot. It's very
Did
brave.
you throw up yet?
That's just for me. That's for me.
I had my binder. I got to study up before, so I was prepared, Kevin. No,
I can remember your nerves would get the best of you through so many times, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to do it. Just to open your hearts up and to do it, and it takes a lot more work than I realized.
You mentioned, how Dad and I do this, and I think what we like for whatever reason is I think like being vulnerable and we'll pretty much share whatever. And I think we take that for granted because we do it so freely, but there's a lot of peace in it when you're able to do it. And part of, I think, why it works for us is just that we accept each other for what we've done good and what we've done bad, and hopefully what we'll continue to do together and in our relationship as a father and a daughter. But it's a lot of fun. But yeah, it is hard work, but we're finding a lot of joy in it. So I guess we'll just keep, as we say, we're not going to be shy. We'll keep sharing it. So.
Well, the process, even the questionnaire, the process of me filling out that questionnaire was really fun because it forced me to kind of go back, look at logbooks, look at trips that I write down kind of where we go on trips. And so,
yeah.
And so it's not only fun to bring back those old memories you've forgotten about, and it's kind of cathartic sometimes to realize, to write down that you were a scared 18-year-old that cried, because it's not the sort of thing, like you said, that you normally would mention. So I think with this podcast too, it makes you guys dig in a little deeper and kind of get through the process.
Get through the therapy.
In a public way. So that's great. That's brave. But also
I was going to say it earlier when we were in the middle of something, and I'm glad I came back to it. But I mean, it goes back to my first observation of you, of just, the degree of professionalism, the posturing or the body language, and Amin Mo, I mean, he's like a brother as well. I know, Jamie says you're only that many years apart, but I looked at you guys as younger brothers, not a dad figure. So, and I think that shows just with putting you under my wing and kind of showing you everything that I could show you, you teaching me what you could teach me and me teaching you what I could teach you. And I know you brought that up in the responses of just, one mentor to another mentor. It was really kind of cool the way you said that. But dude, you just, you say, you've said it many times in this podcast, that just having to be and act older than you are, and that says it all right there. Your maturity level, your age, you're a wise old man in a young body. So that you always have been, is my point. You always knew when to have fun, and then you always knew when it was time for business. You just it's time for some business. We're gonna go fly today. We'll drink beer when we get home. Let's not be worried about the beer right now. Let's fly and get home. So, anyway,
it's very kind.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and like I said, I think it clearly shows, that you've been a part of us as much as we've enjoyed being a part of you, for sure.
Yeah,
and how fond we are of those times. You can't replace them.
We can't replace them, but I think also, Misty says it's hard to make new old friends, and I think sometimes life just gets so busy, and then you realize years have gone by, and then we have this meeting here with Jamie and then with you. I saw you last week, Kevin, and it's just like no time has passed.
No time,
you just jump back in, which makes you, I think, reinforces that we actually have to make a little bit more of an effort to just get together. Yeah, it's just not that hard.
Yeah, we do.
It's not that hard.
We do, and I think you say that a lot. I mean, I noticed that the relationships are really precious, and if you don't culture them, they don't grow. Sure. And, some of the ones that you've cultured for so long and so hard, you don't water it. And again, it does die. And I think, Misty said that's a great point. But I think back about, I'm organizing this high school reunion, and just how fondly I look at those times, and getting, and just in the contact of me trying to organize this and touching base with these people, I feel, I don't know any of them, if you think about it, at age 69, but I know who we were at age, 18. And everybody just, you have a want to just kind of get back. And, so I've got almost 40 of us showing up. And I mean, I know that there'll be some cancellations, but hopefully somebody fills in the spots. But that's quite a bit from a class of 55 to be able to get 40. And I think it's only about 5 or 6 of us that are actually bringing, a significant other to it, because who would really want to go to a reunion?
Well, I just thank you so much for doing this. It was cool. It was great to see you, and just fun to reconnect. I like your point about old friends, and we say this with my girls trip we do every year. We don't, we see each other once a year, hopefully once a year, and we get together, and it's just like nothing's different. No time has passed. And while it's sad but it's also really joyful, because you're like, it's amazing that we can have these gaps, and yet it is still the same. It shows that those are real friendships, and real connections. And I love that. So it's it was really lovely to see your face tonight. So thank you for doing this.
Oh no, I feel so honored to be
give Missy a big hug for me. And God, I can't believe your daughter's graduating college, but it's amazing.
Exciting times.
Yeah. All right.
Yep. All right, brother. Well, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you for tuning in today. With so many podcasts out there, we are grateful you chose to spend your time with us.
And we'd love to hear from you. So send us your questions, comments, and feedback to info@twoclicksinapod.com, and we might feature your message in a future episode.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social, and head over to our YouTube channel where you can watch the full episode live and in living color. You can find us at 2 Clicks in a Pod. That's 2, as in the number, clicks in a pod.
Well, James, until next time, love you.
Love you too, Daddy.